Hello, my name is Darren Woodfork. I'm an attorney in Scottsdale, Arizona, and on this channel I talk about things involving Arizona law and some of the laws in the country here, and also international law. Today I want to talk about something that kind of touches on international law, and that's something called citizenship by investment. And if you don't know what that is, that basically means that you can get a second passport or you can become a citizen of another country if that country has it available, has a process for doing that. Essentially what you normally have to do is you have to invest some money in the country, and then after a certain amount of time they will give you citizenship, and then when you get citizenship you can get a passport. Essentially that's the whole point, and then you have your options in the world basically with a second passport. You may not think that might not be needed, but if you remember back in 2020, the America, when we had the COVID issue, the American passport was one of the worst passports in the world. You couldn't travel anywhere because America's numbers were so high back in 2020. But if you had a second passport, you could fly or you could travel on that second passport and be fine. So that's why people might want to have a second passport, is that so they could have some options in life. One of the things that I was going to mention, I'm mentioning today, is some of the requirements in the countries that offer this, and there's only about maybe a couple dozen countries, if that allow you to get a second passport. But if they do, they set the standards, or they set the requirements for what it takes to get in there. First of all, it's going to be like I said, usually a monetary investment. Usually it's like $200,000 or $500,000, maybe even $1 million that you'd have to invest in the country. Maybe that's just giving the country that much money or investing in real estate in that country. That's usually one of the main requirements of getting that second passport. After that, you'll have to pass a background check, obviously. And usually it's a third party. There's third party companies that do these really, really serious background checks for the country who's going to give you that passport. And so they do the background check. It's a criminal background check. It's a medical background check. It's very intensive that they do. I mean, some countries are more intensive than others, but it's very extensive as far as other requirements go. There's also a requirement of what's called proof of funds. And that, I mean, it's a simple phrase, but it means a lot. And basically what it means, it's kind of the anti-money laundering laws that come into effect. Basically, you have to prove that you're not laundering money by giving this country all this money. You have to prove where the money's coming from that you're using to invest, essentially. So you have to prove the source of funds, how you got the money. And that's a requirement for pretty much, that's required for every country that I can think of anyway. And so you have to basically prove that your money is legit, because a lot of people, a lot of money launderers or people who buy and trade weapons or terrorism, things like that, they might be wanting to launder money, in these second passport countries, whatever. So you have to prove the source of funds in that requirement. Then also the countries, they kind of set like the application forms, how many documents you have to provide. They also talk about what the time frame is from like the day you file everything to when they're going to give you the second citizenship, all that stuff. Each country pretty much dictates what the requirements are. I mentioned before some of the more popular countries are Turkey. I think Malta is a big country for second citizenship. And the reason why those are big countries, they're so popular, is because they're part of the European Union. I believe they're part of the European Union. And that if you get a passport there, then you can go and work anywhere else in Europe, essentially. And if you're in Turkey or Malta, I think those are the two biggest countries. I think I saw recently that there's a couple citizenships in Latvia and maybe New Zealand, I think. And then there's always all those countries where it kind of started in like the Caribbean, where they had St. Kitts and Nevis, maybe the Bahamas, all those countries down there that were part of the old the United Kingdom or the British colonies. Seems like all those old countries down there, they offer second citizenships, and they were the ones that were most kind of like popular, at least in the beginning anyway. And then finally, and I should have mentioned this 2 minutes ago, but the requirements that these countries set in place, sometimes they're not really they don't come from the state itself. A lot of times it comes from big countries like America or France or Germany or Australia. The big countries that oversee like kind of the world, kind of. I mean that's probably not the right way to say it, but like if you're in Malta, like the country of Malta, they get a lot of pressure from the United States and Canada as far as who they're letting getting a second citizenship. And so they put pressure on them to make these requirements very strict. Obviously, like the criminal background check. I mean, if you're France, you don't want a bunch of people getting a second citizenship in Malta, and then they can travel to France, basically, if they're criminals or whatever. So the requirements for these things, sometimes they have more to do with the countries kind of, on the periphery or whatever, kind of overseeing it, than they do actually the countries themselves. So that's a reason why some of the countries are more strict than others, and they have more requirements from others, because of like the bigger countries anyway. So anyways, again, if you're thinking about looking at a second citizenship, just Google the term. And you can find anything like online or whatever, really look into it specifically. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope that you found that interesting. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Bye.